the more inclusive you make the list, if you miss something, then it might be that was meant to be excluded. So you want it to, if possible, to align with something at the state statute level already, and it also eases up on the language that we have to put into the charter. City records are okay. Employment. So this is the employment of an elected official once his or her term is done. And the broad agreement was no administrative position for 1 year. So if you want to go work for Public Works, as long as you're not being the Public Works director, that would be fine. So that's where that one was. That's where we kind of left that one. Are we in agreement to calling everything the same?
I believe that's what we said at the last meeting.
Okay. And then once you got done with council, we went to the charter officers. No change in position, so the city council will still have 2 employees, and those 2 employees will be the city manager and the city attorney. When the first part under charter officers goes into appointment removal, compensation, filling the vacancies, and candidates. So no changes to the appointments. It still takes the majority of the council. Removal, no change, and it's kind of that double layer with the council if there's going to be a majority, a supermajority, that if it's a supermajority is what's needed, then it would automatically happen, where if it's not a supermajority, the individual who is being removed has the opportunity to make his or her case at the next meeting. And then there would be the regular vote. Add contract for compensation, to note that the compensation as well as the format for the evaluation is in the contract. And then adding that there should be an annual review of these members. Mr. Machero?
Would that also include a public meeting about the evaluation of the city manager and attorney?
Would what?
Like when they're going to vote on their evaluations for their increases, right? Mm-hmm. And their contract to be renewed. Would that not be a public meeting?
When you say when the city council is voting on any salary increases for the city manager or the city attorney, that's what you're speaking of?
Right, which includes the evaluation.
Right, that is all public.
It is all public, okay.
There's no way around that in Florida. It has to be public records. It's brought to a discussion of the council at a public meeting, usually a workshop to discuss, to make the, you always want any employment review to be constructive. And so you have constructive feedback, so you can say what's working, what's not working. We'd like to see you work on here, some goals we'd like to see you set, and then the following year, see if those goals were met. Where's the change made? But all of that has to be done in public. But then it's at a business meeting that the actual raise would have to be voted on.
But does it have to be in the charter? If it does, it should be. I think it should be.
So that if you want to ensure that the city manager and the city attorney are evaluated on an annual basis, yes, it needs to be in the charter. But you could just say annual evaluation. The details of that, when it would be, the type of that can be done in a contract and in ordinance and policy. But if it's not in the charter, I have seen cities that the city manager, because there's no raise being asked for, doesn't have the valuations. So that is so yeah, it's gotta be public, but if it's not in the charter, it could not happen.
I think it needs to be in the charter. If for no other reason, then I think the public should be able to comment on the city manager's performance, even if he's not asking for a raise. Because it's the citizens who are paying a salary, the citizens who either gain the benefit of his expertise or suffer from, either misconduct or just plain poor performance. So I really think that it should be in the charter just to ensure that that has to be done every year in a public meeting.
Comments on that?
Thank you.
Okay, so it's just in the charter, it's just going to be an annual evaluation. It will not go into the wording would be something to the effect of all officers will be evaluated on an annual basis. And then whether that annual basis aligns with the fiscal year, whether it aligns with the date of hiring, that can be sorted out under the contract.
Because it's not in there, it's not clearly stated now, right?
Yeah. Contract, filling, okay, so, filling vacancies is to tighten up the timeline. Right now, it's a 90-day time, and you wanted it to be immediately upon the opening of a vacancy that the process start to fill the vacancy for a city manager or the city attorney. And then the candidates. There's one section that says that they have to interview candidates, qualified candidates. You wanted to throw the qualified word in there to make sure that it's a certain level. Mr. Turner?
Did we put an end date on that immediate, like they have to hire by a certain period? I know we discussed it, but I don't remember what the.
There was no end date that was set, and if I recall correctly, part of the reason was what happens if it's a failed search. You don't want to be forced on the back end because of the charter that you then have to hire someone even if he or she is not the best fit for Palm Coast. So as long as the process is started immediately, once it gets started, you get the job description, you figure out if you're going to hire a consulting firm or not to help with the search. The search goes out, it stays open for 30 days, and then at the end of the 30 days, you look to see who's applied, and then you select, you start winnowing it down after that. If you have that date certain, like in 90 days, we have to have a city manager.
Okay.
If you do that, in 90 days, if nobody was that good, you are stuck with the best of whatever was out there instead of the best person for the job.
Again, I just couldn't remember whether we had an end certain on it, that's all. Thank you.
Okay.
One more thing. Do we actually want to define the qualifications for the city manager?
That's the next section.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Well, actually, no, that's not the section. So there was discussion about, well, okay, yeah, there it is. So the qualified, that's where we ended the charter officers. The next section is the city manager, and under there, it has qualifications. And we discussed that you wanted more details, but you didn't want it to be too prescriptive, but you don't want it to be too loosey-goosey. I'm going to reiterate again, the more details you have in the charter, the more you are tying the hands of any future hiring of city managers. So if there's something in there, you want to make sure that any individual that you could see as being qualified city manager would have that qualification. So as much as I love MBA degrees, maybe that shouldn't be in there for this sole purpose that they could have been coming up through the ranks, might not have gotten the MBA, might have gotten that, the ICMA CM certification, but or they could have been for years an assistant city manager, but never had the formal education, but still would be an excellent candidate. So if in the charter you say that it has to have this, it has to have that. And so that's when you really start narrowing it. We'll get into that a little bit with this city attorney as well. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, in my opinion, you say the city manager should have either a bachelor's degree in public administration, business administration, or other related fields, or public administration experience in finance or experience in a city manager or assistant city manager in a city of similar population and budget. Because we did have a city manager who was hired, he came from a city of 8,000 people, and he didn't work out very well, and he ended up being, I think he resigned before being fired, but you don't scale up from a small budget of 8,000 people to 100,000 people and, a budget of $67 million.
Right. Again, you want to make sure that if you do put something like that in the charter, is that excluding anyone who'd be an excellent candidate, or do you leave it on the council since it's their job to hire someone? If they hire someone who is like that, does not.
Well, that's why my word would include the word should. So if the council decides they want to override that because they feel they have a great candidate who doesn't have any of that experience, they could, and then the citizens could hold the city council responsible if it turns out to be a fiasco.
So what would be the benefit of having it in there to begin with?
Just
They
because-
don't have to follow. Remember, you wanna make sure the charter stays as clean as possible for people to easily understand it. So when they start reading the stuff into it, you don't want it to be, well, no, they really should have had this.
Well, because right now there is nothing in there.
Right.
There is nothing at all that gives you any details at all. Shall be selected on the basis of experience, expertise, and management ability as it pertains to running municipal government. What does that really mean? So, because I understand your point about not trying to have a council's hands, but at least if we put something in there that says should, it gives the council, any council, some basic guidelines that they should follow. And then if they don't choose them, then the citizens have the right to say, well, this candidate has none of these qualifications. Why are you pushing, and why are you voting for this candidate?
I don't know if should would be the right word, because should is almost like this is what you should do, that you're going to do this versus could.
How about consider?
They should consider the management qualifications.
Like, what about
What-
Mr.
minimum?
Machado?
What about minimum? I mean, there should be a baseline minimum that you should be educated in this position.
How do you define educated in that position?
Well, obviously, a
Experience.
4-year degree, right? A 4-year degree, that's.
I have a 4-year degree in physics, does that make me qualified?
Maybe, unless, if you have, many classes or perhaps some type of sub-degree in accounting, it might actually work for you more here. But what I'm saying is that, and I mean, being a rocket scientist and a city manager is not a bad thing to do, right? So, but my point is that there should be at least a minimum degree requirement and experience requirement. And then, obviously, if someone has a master's in all these different positions, it would be a benefit. So, could we not at least ask for a minimum, like it says, equivalent city, and just a baseline. And then from there, education level can be considered open by the board, by council. And like Mike said, if they're not happy with it, the people could get out there and make it known.
I'll give you one, and there's a county administrator retired here in Florida, and kind of odd. He and I didn't always see eye to eye, and ended up working together very closely. He was an engineer, and came up through. He started in New York, working in the utility in the sewer system, and he had a BA. At least that's where he started. He worked his way up, and he ended up coming down here to Palm Beach, down to South Florida near Palm Beach here. And he kept working around, and he became I don't know if he ever became the director or not of the utility system, but he ended up being an assistant county administrator. And he was that, and he was so good at his job. I mean, I had a master's, I'd been in HR and all around too, but he ran circles around me. I mean, the guy was just a phenom at what he did. And he could take the worst situation and make, like they say, lemonade out of lemons, and he was just really good. So he had a BA in engineering, but he did have a lot of experience. He came in and, like Dr. Dumont said, worked his way up through the system, and because he was so good, he just got elevated. And it wasn't elevated because somebody thought he was a nice guy. He was elevated because he knew what he was doing. But I agree, this day and age, I've seen appointments being made that I don't agree with. And it ends up usually pretty close, I'm right? Pretty close. And I just think you're right, you need a combination of experience and education and in government. Now, whether it be, you want to say municipal or county or whatever, or size of local government, that'd be fine. But like the doctor says, you don't want to get it too tight because you might find somebody you really like and can do the job. I mean, you've worked with plenty of people, you turn around and say, gosh, that guy was really good,
Well, that's why I think we can substitute experience for education, so that covers it if somebody doesn't have a degree, but they have experience in city administration and city management, they can still be hired. But I think you have to have one of the two. You have to have a formal education in it, or you have to have experience in doing it.
Well, Mike, if you don't mind, but you also have to realize that they've had to have some experience managing multiple large budget departments. They can't be, we've had that. We took a person out of a department, put them in charge of all those departments, and then they kind of Peter Principled out right to the top, and they couldn't go anymore, couldn't do anymore, couldn't get the rest of it done, and that's sad, because that person was a great person, was a very lovely person, and we lost that person, because we tried to make them a city manager, and they just weren't ready. And so now, what do? Yes, we need to have a baseline, and we should offer that to the city council, that they have a baseline, and then the more education, you just add points to the application process, but that's definitely a minimum. They need to have a baseline. Whatever the baseline is that we can kind of put together, or maybe suggestions from you, audience, whatever. But I think we need a baseline that we could give to the council.
Give you another
I agree with the baseline, but I was mentioning to Martin, my worry is that if we get too picky or emphasize too much on one thing, in reality, is it gonna go through? Is it gonna go to the ballot? So I honestly believe that we should keep it as short as possible, so that we do have a chance of having it go through and reach the ballot. I agree with you, there should be a minimum. I definitely agree with that. But something in the back of my head, I'm worried about producing a document that's not gonna go the whole way.
And if I may, I agree, but there's nothing in the charter that gives a baseline.
Right.
That's the problem I have. I just think that the city needs a baseline, and then
That's the
from
same
there,
problem I have.
city council should be smart enough, HR should be smart enough to start to pick the person that's gonna, the applicants, and go through from there, but there's no baseline. So it could be anyone who looks and sounds great and makes a great presentation, and suddenly they're your city manager, and we're gonna be another 500 million in the hole before you know it. So
Okay, so,
this is not a learning curve job. This is, you come in and here's the keys to the car, and go. Thank
Okay,
you,
so
sir.
based off of these conversations, I have qualifications. The city manager shall be selected on the basis of expertise, education, and management expertise as it pertains to running municipal government of a similar size to Palm Coast.
I would say similar size or budget.
Well, it all depends on how you want to do size. So sometimes, if you're researching the city, the size is usually going to be the budget, not the population. There's a high correlation, obviously.
Okay, yeah, to me, size is either population or geographical area, to me, is
Right.
an engineerhood. As long as it's understood that it should be, you can't take somebody that's, done a, $1 million budget and put them in charge of a budget that's, $697 million. Because it doesn't scale up that quickly.
Okay. Similar size and budget of Palm Coast. Residency, we talked about within 50 miles of the city limit.
Yes, we did.
Any questions on what we already covered?
No, other than, maybe just repeating why we said 50 miles.
Okay, 50 miles, it makes sense to be able to attract a broader group of individuals who could be qualified to be the city manager by not having them have to live in the city. In a lot of cities, it's just because in Florida, the coastal cities, it's because they can't afford to, if you mandate a city manager to live in the city and your city housing is very expensive, then you have to make sure that the salary is going to match where they're able to buy a house in your city. So Palm Coast is not there yet. Florida's moving in that direction. So that was one of them, and then you should be able to get here in a timely fashion within, if you live within 50 miles. That said, I was just at a conference after last time I saw you guys, in Tampa, and there was an interesting, research on when charters mandate city managers live within the city. So yes, it decreases the applicant pool of applicants, by making them live there, but those who do choose to live within the city limits are far more engaged and knowledgeable about the city. So while it's not mandatory, it could be strongly encouraged. But that would mainly go into the rationale for this recommendation, just to keep it clean.
I'll give you a good example, Palm Beach. City manager, I don't know any city manager's ever been there, ever lived there, because they couldn't afford it, even back in the time you and I were talking about. So.
Yeah, and nobody wants to spend that much money on a city manager, just so they can live in the place.
I do know a city, just like churches, have a manager's home,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, some universities have that. The president to entertain. All right, which brings us to this week's stuff. Let's finish up charter officers. So here we have the powers and duties of the city manager, and there is all right, so we talked about I got ahead of myself. Talked about the qualifications, talked about the residency, here we go. This is what they must do. Attend all the city powers and duties. Another typo there, I have qualifications too. Yes, so that, ignore that thing, it's supposed to say powers and duties. The city manager shall attend all meetings of the city council, draw and sign vouchers upon depositories, and keep or cause to be kept a true and accurate account of same. Such vouchers shall be countersigned by the mayor or by the vice mayor in the event of the office of mayor is vacant. If both the mayor and vice mayor offices are vacant, the acting mayor shall countersign such vouchers. How are you guys with that?
Well, they just put mayor and acting mayor instead of all that language. Is that a dumb question?
Has it ever happened?
I doubt it.
With both of those who've been out, I mean, in the history, I've been here 20 years, I've never seen that happen.
I've only seen it once in all the career I was in.
So, it's already in the charter that if the mayor is not there, the vice mayor is the mayor. It has done all the duties of the mayor. So I think that it's covered elsewhere, and it ends up just being redundant in this section. The other piece being the acting mayor. So I'll make a note of this, so when we go back to looking at council and mayor, to make sure that there is the mayor, vice mayor, mayor's not there, vice mayor's not there, the acting mayor would then assume the duties of the mayor, which would negate having to have all of this stuff in there. Not all the stuff. It would negate the.
Less is more.
But remember though, anything we change has to go on the ballot. Even if it's a little wordy, if we leave it alone, it doesn't have to go on the ballot. I know it's a little wordy, but it seems to me that's just a kind of technical change.
That's a good point, because we're trying to get a lot on, and maybe that's the legal way.
As long as it's not something that's gonna harm us, if it's wordy, just let's leave it alone, because we have a number of on the ballot.
So this is why when we go through this again, at the end of this process, you'll have a lot of changes. And that's when you rank order your changes, which things are cleanup, which things are substantive, which things and then you rank order your substantive pieces. That gives the council an idea of what things are really critical to get on the next ballot versus the ballot after that, versus the ballot after that, or versus a low turnout ballot, if it's just going to be things to correct typos and clean things up, and there's no changes to the actual processes or substance, that can go on a different ballot.
And I think it's important to to not be adding to, you know, Mike is completely right on that. Ramon, did you have something? I saw you.
No, I agree.
So what was the decision?
Leave it alone.
Leave it alone.
Just leave it alone?
But I would wonder if anybody would have any interest in doing something to forbid a city council from firing a city manager if there's gonna be an election within, say, 30 days.
We have that in there. We did that earlier.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, way in the front end of this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We talked about, boy, senior moment.
Okay, so the removal, so you do have a removal of the city manager, and that's that two-pronged removal,
Right.
Yeah, so-
but not, there's no time frame that's included in there.
I wouldn't wanna see outgoing council members vote to remove a city manager and then the incoming council members say, well, why'd you remove him? I think he's doing a good job.
I know we did it for the council.
Yeah, I
The
don't
council
think
said
we
you
did it,
might- we might not.
I don't think we did it for the city
No, you
manager.
haven't.
Okay.
So,
That would have been covered here.
so I'm just curious whether there'd be any interest in that. Just to prevent a lame duck, either, somebody who's not running there or somebody who's term limited.
Somebody going out who doesn't like the city manager, wants the
Yeah.
manager to go too.
Because we've all seen council meetings and city, county commission meetings where they do something at the meeting the last one before the election and they get rid of somebody or they do something else and.
Well, they sort of done that, before, so, where they fired the city manager and then there was some elections just happened, so, yeah, I think it probably would, but then again, you have to understand, though, maybe there's a point where you have to terminate the city manager. But we have that discussion that protects that, so I don't know if we have to put that in there, and put a limit, a date that they cannot fire anyone.
At this level, if the manager doesn't have a decent contract, that manager shouldn't be sitting here. And that contract's going to make them sit up and think about what they're doing. Now, maybe they don't, but it's all it's just like these coaches we're seeing right now in the college game. They're getting bought out and done and sent down the way. And I've known plenty of city managers. I've seen a vote come up at the dais that night. I watched one get up and walk away from his seat because he said, fine, pay me, and left. So I don't know if you leave it to that end or you put it in here, right?
Okay, so let me raise a couple concerns with that. So if you have it within 6 months of the election, remember that you already wanted to be changed that the replacement would start immediately. And so that would be immediately with the possibility of a council that's not gonna be there at the end of the process. So that ends up being one piece. Another is how we swapped it out, what the recommendation for you may not appoint anybody if council, if somebody resigns from council before 6 months from election, and let's say 2 people step down, you're really narrowing down who's going to be selecting a city manager at that point, since the process now would have to start immediately. So like, these are catches that you wanna make sure that you're not like tying your, so if we discussed it, kind of discussed it a little bit, it was that 2-tiered process, that the supermajority wants the city manager gone, then the city manager is going to be gone. But if it's not the 2/3, if it's not the supermajority, then the city manager has an opportunity to make his or her case to the council as a whole at the next meeting, and that's how it's currently written.
Yeah, I was thinking more like a 30-day notice. If it's 30 days before the election, it seems to me you should let the incoming council decide that rather than the outgoing council. But if, you're right, because we did do it with the supermajority, and if it's not a supermajority, and if 8% of the council wants the city manager gone, there's probably a very good reason for that. So, yeah, I'm happy with that then.
Okay, so no 30 days before you can't remove.
No.
It's what usually happens is the new council comes in and they remove.
That's what usually happens.
All right. wanna keep the other part there when it comes to mentioning the signatures. So, back to the signatures.
We said we'd leave it alone because even though I thought it was wordy, it's one of those things,
Another item on the ballot.
yeah, it's not necessary to change it.
Be responsible for signature and issuance of all licenses issued by the city, issuances of receipts for all monies paid to the city, and deposit of said monies in the proper depositories on the first banking day after receipt.
Buck stops at his desk or her desk.
So it should.
You guys do,
Yeah, I think we should stay the same, everybody?
Mm-hmm.
We're good.
okay.
Good.
Provide administrative services as required by the mayor and council.
I see no change. Everybody?
No change,
Appoint the city clerk to serve at his or her pleasure.
no change.
No change.
Now, there was a change, somebody, I had in my notes, I was looking at it tonight, somebody suggested that we're gonna look at the clerk being appointed by the mayor and council, or did we decide against that?
It was decided to not change it, to only keep the two city council.
Okay, I
Two
just wanted to
appointed
make sure.
city council, but then there was
That's what
discussion,
the
should
system
each council
Okay.
be more involved with the city clerk than the others, but it was, no, that it can be, the city council, the city clerk should serve at the pleasure of the city manager.
Fine,
We're good.
I just have one thing on the powers and duties, and again, just if everybody agrees, I thought we should add a section that it should be the city manager shall be responsible for the collection of all fees and taxes owed to the city.
I always thought that was city council's responsibility, was to collect the fees and taxes, not the city manager. I think his job is to facilitate collection of it, but to get taxes, you have to get a board approving for tax
I'm
increases.
trying to think.
One is the facilitator to collect it, and the other is the actual people that vote to get it.
The taxes are collected by the county and given to the city. And same thing with state revenue sharing. So I'm trying to think what he would be approving.
Fees,
Utility fees,
water,
yeah, I
water.
could see utility fees and.
But only on the collection side, not approve, he doesn't approve, or she does not approve that increase or decrease.
No, it's a collection.
Just the
The
collection.
city manager shall be responsible
Yeah, well,
for the collection of it.
Yeah.
You're just making sure it comes in and goes into the bank.
Exactly.
It says in number 3 here, right at the bottom, the last few lines, it says, "And deposits of said monies at the proper depositories in the first banking day."
All paid to the city.
So that's that person's job, is to make sure monies come in and go from here to there without
Okay.
finding in
Yeah.
someone's pocket. That's right. So no change. I think we're on number 6.
Back to the city clerk is keep, appoint, and suspend or remove any employee of the city. The city manager shall authorize any administrative officer who is subject to his or her direction and supervision to exercise these powers with respect to subordinates in that officer's department, office, or agency within the guidelines of stated personnel policies and procedures.
I think in the discussion that we had, did we not say that an employee can come back for, an appeal?
That's part of the
It's-
adopted rules, I think.
Is that not in there somewhere? Because
It's not in the charter, and that discussion, I believe, took place at the last citizen input meeting, not
Oh.
this body.
right,
But this would be the time you want to address that. So, the citizen input at that meeting, they were discussing how involved city council should get in staff decisions. And it was widely agreed upon, the city council should be doing things that the city manager is hired to do. But then the question arose as to whether if the city manager chooses to fire a department head, should that department head be able to appeal to council?
No. That just comes from an old city manager. No.
And we went through the pros and cons, and that means that you opening up the door to let council start
Managing
making
the city.
decisions for the city. Where if you have a department head who's not listening to the city manager, and the city manager wants to fire that person, but that department head is also doing favors for people on the council and knows that he or she's not gonna get fired, so it'll be overridden by the city council, that's not good for the city manager to actually do his or her job. If something's not getting done, that means that it's on the city manager to make sure it gets done, and when he or she gets evaluated.
So, director, city manager, we've had that experience, and you are going to butt heads with your city manager, and if you wanna get your project done, you have to sell it, and it sometimes gets really ugly and almost feels as though you will be fired the next day you show up for work. But that's just the way life is. So if you're good at your job, you don't get fired. If you're not good at your job and you're disruptive to your city manager, yes, you could go back and maybe talk to your city council, and they can maybe talk with that person and perhaps save your rear end. But at the end of the day, that the city manager's job is to manage everyone, and that includes the personalities of the department heads.
And if the director comes to the city manager and he comes up with an idea and the manager butts heads and says, no, I don't like it, you either go my way or the highway, and it turns out to be a good idea, well, that city manager is probably gonna lose their job, so.
So no change.
Let me just ask one question. Under state law, if somebody gets fired, dismissed, do they have the right to sue for, say, illegal dismissal or wrongful dismissal?
Florida's a right to work.
Correctly, so,
If you're not unionized, you don't have those protections. There are federal legal protections, depending on why you were fired. That if you can prove that it was
With
age
cause or
discrimination or pregnancy discrimination, that there are certain protections that are afforded to individuals, but Florida is an at-work state.
right.
And if you are not unionized, depending on what if you're a contract employee, what are the city's personnel policies? If all of those things were met, then, and you got fired, you got fired.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there were any options, and we could just leave it alone, let the city manager
No,
dismiss it at will.
right, and then they can, and again, it ends up being what are your city's personnel policies. So I'm gonna suggest that if you wanna take any comments from the audience before we get to, because we've gone like 3 or slides, just in case anybody has a,
Okay, we're talking about just the.
just what we just
sections,
covered.
okay? All right, well, you're up. State your name.
Jeannie Duarte, that's kind of lengthy where I'm almost forgetting where I was at. So, on the manager search, education and level, they can have all the education and, qualifications, experience, but they could be burning down their own lives. Is there background requirements? Maybe they're bankrupt, maybe they're in debt really bad. Just because they can do the job doesn't mean they're actually doing it within their own home, their own lifestyle. Maybe somebody who doesn't have all those qualifications are retired or they have great, their credit score is awesome, maybe, you know. So who's checking the credit scores? Who's checking to see that they're not burning their own home down? And why are they moving here? Why do they want to come here? Are they running away from something? So anyway, that's a concern of my own, thinking, you know, bringing somebody in who has qualifications that may not be doing that in their own life. Do they have common sense, basically? And let's see, the office vacancy, number 2 on B, charter office. The vacant, office vacant, wording on that. So would the office actually have to be vacant, or would they just not be present at the time? Maybe they're on vacation, or maybe they're sick in the hospital. Does that state that that position has to be vacant?
Can I interrupt you? Can you stop the clock? Dr. Dumont, on this case, can you explain that, what that vacant part is?
That's, number V, or 5, charter officers, number 2.
One back, I think one slide back.
Yeah, one slide back. Okay,
Number 2?
no,
Filling vacancy there, that,
It's the one where we got stuck on making a decision on how many,
Yeah.
we didn't wanna change how many, who's out, wait,
the event of the office of the mayor or vice mayor,
vacant.
Is vacant.
What is the term vacant, she wants to know?
or the office, does that mean that they're actually, what if they're just on vacation and they're not present?
I think that includes that in there, Jeannie, that's
Their
what
office
our
isn't vacant.
interpretation is, but
Their office-
Dr. Dumont.
They're still in office.
Yeah, you're right, it's a good point.
yeah, it's
It's the
Section
office-
1D.
it's the office of mayor is vacant, not that the mayor's not there that day, the office is vacant. That means if there's
We
no
don't have a mayor.
right, if there's no mayor, now you have the vice mayor.
Okay, so that's two separate situations. But if the mayor is on vacation or sick or
Yeah,
ill,
when they get back, they sign their stuff.
so their office is still their office, but,
Right.
yeah. So is that gonna be two separate lines and two separate issues for that?
But wouldn't that be the same? I mean, the office isn't vacant because the mayor is
Right, there's still a
sick
mayor.
out.
There's still the mayor.
Still the mayor, right?
Right, and if there's a vacancy, then the vice mayor has to be the mayor.
On vacation,
Or if the
vice
vice
mayor.
mayor's gone around, you know, whatever happens, let's say now you don't have a mayor and you don't have a vice mayor, and then you have the acting.
Right, but I have an issue with office and vacancy being in the same line as far as, well, there's still a mayor.
Well, it's the office of mayor is
It's
vacant.
office
It's
of.
not the mayor is
It's
vacant,
not
the
the-
office of mayor is vacant.
Oh, okay, I'm seeing that a little differently now. I get you.
Okay, start.
You're knocking on his door and he's not there.
Okay, we'll start the
Yeah,
clock
no, it
now.
is the office of the mayor.
Office of-
Thank you, we're gonna go forward, Jeannie, we're gonna start the clock.
I think that's all. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else?
Respond that pretty good. All right, I want to come back to the qualification of the city manager. And I like your example of somebody who was coming from a lower position and having the gift and doing a good job. And I think when anybody is hired for any position, there's always a question of chance, because that person might be qualified but not have the gift. So qualification is not necessarily the way to go as a first, I would think. And also, I want to go back to the residents of the city manager within 50 miles. I would say, I believe the actual one is getting a salary of 190 something, and the mayor suggested that the next one might be getting $250,000 a year. I mean, who can't afford to live in Pacos with such a salary? You know, I would like to see somebody directing the city and be engaged in the life of the city. I mean, if that person having a salary that high can't afford living in the city, none of us can.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I?
You have one minute? Yes, yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
One comment?
I'll wait till he's finished.
Good evening, Ken McGivney, Granted. I have two questions actually. In the slide that deals with the depositories, I think that there should be verbiage in there about delegation of that, because I cannot see either a male or female city manager worrying about the day-to-day deposits. I mean, we have a financial function, and it's their responsibility to do it. The outside auditors come in, et cetera, so I think there should be some verbiage about delegation. My other concern is about the removal of a charter officer. Whether or not a supermajority or just a majority is selected, I believe that if a motion is made to terminate any of the charter officers, and there is a stipulation, whether it's the majority or the supermajority, if that number of votes is not in the affirmative, that motion does not pass. That person does not get terminated. There's not, okay, if we needed 4, we only got 3, the person is terminated, but they can appeal the decision. No, they don't get terminated at all. Council then has to go back and noodle their brains to say, okay, can we compromise on yes or no? And if they still do not get the supermajority or the vast majority, that person still is an employee of the city of Palm Coast.
Can you?
I'll do the clarification.
Thank you.
So the first one, the delegation, it is up to the city manager to ensure this stuff gets done. It doesn't mean that the city manager actually has to go to the bank. It just means that this is going to be a responsibility of the CFO or whomever is going to be taking the place of whoever's making sure that this stuff is getting done. But the responsibility is on the city manager to ensure that those things get done and any monies that come in are in the bank by the end of the first banking day. Not necessarily that he or she is doing it. With regard to, I wrote that one for the ethics.
Vote in the affirmative.
Yes. I'm like, the vote in the affirmative, if you don't have a supermajority on that first vote, the city manager obviously at that point knows that there's an issue going on. And then you have your 2 weeks before the next meeting where that individual's not hired at that point, but it's going to be discussed at the next meeting to figure out what is the situation, why are less than the supermajority trying to fire the city manager. Need at least to have the majority, but why? And then that's when you can go into more details and the council as well as the city manager and do their homework. So it's very similar to what you were saying, and that is how it's currently set. The city manager is not fired unless it is a vote of a supermajority. But if it's a simple majority, then there's something going on, and it's looked into in a deeper level at the next meeting.
Before I have Mr. Miller speak, can you just clarify for both the audience and anyone who might be listening, the difference between a supermajority and majority?
A supermajority is a vote of 4 to 1 on a council of 5, and a majority is 2 to 3. 3 to 2.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Residency, the comment about, and I agree. I mean, I moved into every city or county I've ever worked in, but there's two things that, and I think our Dr. Dumont said it best because of what you heard at Tampa. Most city managers, and I will say most, if they're smart and they can afford it, are going to move into their city. Now, my wife didn't like it for one reason. I did all the grocery shopping, and it took 2 hours for me to go through Publix, and it should not take me 2 hours to go through Publix. But she was used to it. She knew that I'm going to get stopped, and I'm going to get talked to. But even city managers who don't live in their cities, if they're worth their salt, they're spending time. I had a city manager whose wife came to me and said they live just outside her city. And she went, I'm tired of Don on the weekends taking us for rides through the city. But he was so dedicated to his job, he wanted to go out and see what was going on. If they had docks in their city, he'd stop at the docks and see what was going on. I agree. I think if you can afford, you should move. But I would also say if somebody's had say you get a really experienced person who lives just outside the city and has a nice home, has had it for 10 years. Now you're going to force them to sell, to come in? I wouldn't wanna hire that person, cause I don't think that's good financial management.
It gets more complicated,
Yeah.
if there are kids involved, you have to pull the kids out of the school system, depending on where they're coming from. So, yes, city managers, and even if you do have a city manager live in the city, it's no guarantee that the city manager is actually gonna do anything in the city. So, a good city manager doesn't, they'll try and live in the city,
Mhm.
if feasible,
Mhm.
private life and all that, and they don't really live there, they engage there, they go for bike rides, they walk through the neighborhoods. The really good ones, that when you say, well, there's an intersection over here and here, and the sidewalk's broken, yeah, I know, I saw it the other day when I was running by, and they know the city. Now, it's gonna be a little bit more challenging in a city this size, but you can't you can't mandate in a charter that your city manager is going to start running the roads, and within 1 year, you've run every road on both sides. You know,
It also goes to his staff. If he incentivizes his staff, not by money, but by their head, those who live in the city are going to say, it may be a utility, say, hey, I saw a utility light on the other night, but it went back off, somebody might want to go check it. Or in the case, I will tell you, right here in Palm Coast, I had a fit, I played golf, and I kept going by his place, and the golf, they had taken out a section of sidewalk, it was out for almost 3 months. And I finally called up and said something, and it got done, but somebody, you've gotta have a manager who leads by example and gets the people who are above it. I don't care if it's a shovel, the guy or a girl holds the shovel.
He's gotta show leadership.
Yeah.
And so, but this,
Why not remove the distance where they can live around the city? And if they're smart enough, as you say, they will live in the city.
you wanna have some parameters,
Yeah, you gotta have some,
especially now with children.
May I say something about Chantal's question before earlier, also about the background check? Like, I don't think it belongs in the charter, but I think that it should be in maybe the job description, that you should have a fair, I don't know what you wanna call it, whether it's a credit rating, not have anything bad on your credit report within the past 10 years. I mean, even the IRS doesn't go back but 7 years. So, yeah, what's the limit? And should they even ask those questions? And do we have a right to ask those questions? I think so, to some degree.
I don't know any council or commission board I've ever been before that didn't dive deep into I even had one, and whether you like it or not, people don't like it. Everybody stopped, we stopped for the evening, I was just standing out here in the front, and he reached over and he goes, can I talk to you for a second? I said, yes, sir. He says, what church do you go to? And I told him the truth. I said, I don't go to church every Sunday. If you want to know what religion I am, and I go as much as I can, but I said, when you're doing 60 hours a week at the city, sometimes Sunday's my day. I hate to say it, sir, but I go play golf. I'm not a good golfer, by the way. I'm a terrible golfer. But that's what I told him. And you know what? He was the one promoting, was out there carrying the banner for me to do my job.
Yeah, not that that's a question that they actually ask.
I know they can't. I know they're not, but
That's a whole different issue.
But where would we put that, if that was gonna be?
That would, when you hire like a search firm, they go into all of that stuff, and the HR department is going to go into all of that stuff. It doesn't go into the charter, it's assumed that these things will happen, especially at that level.
So, Ms. Chantal, does
I
that
did
answer
not
your
bring
question?
that, I did not bring the,
No, that was Jean.
yeah.
And then the other piece
Too
being,
skinny.
Jean, sorry.
the other piece was the ethics and the background check, like all that, so that falls into that. And then also just, you have to follow the Florida Code of Ethics.
Okay, thank you.
So, those are all covered there. All right, so here we continue on, number 7. Direct and supervise the administration of all departments, officers, and agencies of the city, except where otherwise provided by this charter or by law.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
See that all laws, provisions of this charter, and acts of council are faithfully executed.
I see no change, anybody?
Prepare and submit annually a balanced budget message, and capitals program to the council.
I have a question. I think it's under the finance part, but and maybe that's where we cover it. There's a point in the year, and it's not always done, but I was with a couple places that, in 6 months, we were giving out reports every month, and you could go online and see everything going on. But we had to, in 6 months, come back to the council and tell them, here's what your budget is. We want to take and make this budget smaller, this one bigger, and didn't do it all during the year. We kept within our budgets. We were pretty good at our job. So as the people around me, they did their, I want to call it reconciliation.
Yeah, it was the mid-year modification is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The reconciliation is
Yeah.
the conclusion of the
Right.
fiscal.
So I don't know if it belongs here, or we just leave it in, I think there's a part in the finance document.
Well, I would say, from a consensus standpoint, we go just leaving it the way it is, and
Yes.
we're good, let's move to 10.
You can always come back.
Keep council fully advised as to the financial conditions and future needs of the city and make such recommendations to the council concerning the affairs of the city.
I see no change. Anybody?
No.
We're good?
Submit to the council and to make available to the public a complete report on finances and administrative activities of the city as of the end of each fiscal year.
Which is required by law.
We're good?
Sign contracts on behalf of the city to extend authorization by the council.
Well, look, can we clarify that? Is that, if a contractor wins a contract, and obviously the mayor and the city manager would sign it, and they have to extend the contract for whatever reason, where is, in here is the financial point?
Okay, so what you're talking about here is to the extent authorized by council. So what council authorizes, the city manager signs and implements. In that contract is where you'll see if it's going to be,
Not to exceed.
if it's going to continue, and there's usually 10% contingency, so if it goes above the contingency, it has to come back to council. Or if you're going to extend the contract for more years, that would be in the contract itself. And so the council would have had to vote on that in order for the city manager to extend the contract without going back to council.
I see, thank you. Any questions?
I do have a question. It talks about the city manager shall sign contracts, but in powers and duties of the mayor, it says the mayor shall have the power for service of process and execution of contracts. So what does that term execute? Because I thought they meant that the mayor would have the power to sign contracts on behalf of the city.
The mayor does sign the contracts as the figurehead of the body. It's the mayor and the city mayor and the city manager there's two signatures on those contracts. And it's the city manager who then makes sure that they are executed as stated in number 8.
Okay, because it says the mayor also has the power to execute the contracts.
But not just the mayor, it's not just the mayor.
Okay, the city manager, okay, just wanted to check, thank you.
Well, then do you want to take it out of the mayor's hands to execute a contract?
No,
Okay,
It's gotta be in both.
gotta be both.
okay,
I mean, they need 2 signatures.
right, we need to have the 2.
Yeah,
But
let's-
that, I guess I think, as our vice chair says, is that language that Mike just brought up, where the mayor is signing, but it doesn't say anything about the manager. It does later on, and I'm wondering, that's in conflict, the language is in conflict?
But isn't it when the board approves the contract that the mayor signs that contract and then the execution of the contract is when it goes to the city manager to sign the start date. Like, he's the one that's actually making sure that the work's getting done. Isn't it that's what that means? Is it mayor, council approved it, mayor signs it financially, that portion of it, and then the city manager administers that portion. Isn't that why the two signatures are on there? Am I wrong?
Well, you wanna always have
Just
the
making sure.
contracts on like the $50.
Right.
So anything with the big dollar amounts, you wanna make sure that you have the approval of the council and then the city manager saying it's gonna be implemented.
As it says, it's right here, correct.
Yes.
But it doesn't say the city manager shall execute, it says the mayor shall execute.
Where is that?
It's back to the duties of the mayor, it's, hold on a second.
So it's pretty evident
It's-
that the lawyers got.
It's Article 4, it's under,
Execution of contracts
yeah,
and.
powers and duties of the mayor, section 4 of Article 4. And it says duties, on subsection B, it says, in subsection A, it says, have the power for service of process and execution of all contracts, deeds, and other documents. But it doesn't say execution under the city manager, it just says signature.
All right, I'll look at, I'll clean that right out.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, sign contracts on behalf of the city to the extent authorized by the council, that was the key. Perform other such duties as are specified in this charter or as may be directed by the council. That's the good old catch-all in every employment contract. Keep it?
I don't have any issue, anybody? Move on.
On to the city attorney. Qualifications, residencies, powers, and duties. The city attorney shall be the chief legal officer of the city. The city attorney may either be retained in-house or be retained part-time under contract. You currently have a contracted city attorney. Qualifications. The city attorney must be a member in good standing of the Florida Bar.
And that's a little ridiculous. We could have a tax lawyer, we could have a divorce lawyer, we could have a bankruptcy lawyer. We definitely need to require the city attorney to have some expertise in municipal law.
There's a test that there are some city attorneys that take, it's a special test saying that that's your specialty is administrative and local law in the state of Florida. That said, that not many attorneys have that. So.
No, but they should have expertise. I mean, my recommendation is the city attorney shall be a member in good standing of the Florida Bar and have no less than 5 years of experience in the practice of governmental municipal law. We don't, I don't know,
But now, remember, that here you're also saying that it can be a contractor. So if you contract with a firm, are you saying that if they have a city attorney, if they have an attorney that has been an attorney less than 5 years and doesn't do, are they not allowed to work with the city at all?
No, it'd be the
So
firm.
so it's two different pieces. If you have it in-house, you have far more control than if you contract out.
I mean, I would say that the firms itself should have it, but it'd be much better if the attorney that they provide from the firm have that experience. The whole idea is to make sure that the city gets the best legal advice possible. You know, that's my thinking.
I mean, I'm skeptical, like many people, of elected officials, but isn't that their job to make sure that they get a municipal or a governmental attorney?
It should be, but don't you think that
Oh, I agree.
qualifications should be stated in the charter?
I don't know.
If I may, I mean, you lived through this, I'm guaranteeing you lived through this. I've seen where municipalities hire a local law firm that, quote unquote, was, you know, the municipal firm of all the other municipalities around here, and totally unqualified, in my opinion, okay? And I'm not a lawyer, but I don't have to be qualified to see incompetence. But I will say this, yeah, I agree that there should be some qualification, that we go back to qualifications, but, you know, if the attorney has had time spending in municipal law, it should be acceptable enough, you know, being that they are a bar member. But I mean, I don't know if we could really stick it in the charter as to how detailed that qualification should be.
We could, I mean, I have no problem taking out the number of years, but I still think we should make a requirement in the charter that whoever the city attorney is, or the city law firm, they must have experience in municipal law.
Would they go through, doctor, would they go through a, search firm for an attorney? I mean, how do they?
They all do it differently.
Yeah. So shouldn't that be in the HR portion of it, or in the?
HR portion.
Well, or where can it fit in without going on the charter? Should that not be a qualification for council to review instead of being in the charter? I mean, should it not be like, you're filing for a job as attorney, and as Mike says, you should be a municipal attorney for a period of time?
Or experience in it.
Yeah, experience should it not be, does it have to be in the charter? Where else could it be that the council has to adhere to it?
Well, that the council has to adhere to?
Yeah,
Can we put that in the bucket? Because there was another thing that we discussed, and I don't, you know, we can hash out here, but we talked about having a bucket list of things we wanted to readdress, but also the doctor recommended to us that there's some things that we all know, we've stated up here several things, that we want the council, mayor and council to consider that should be in the charter, but should be doing this. And maybe this is a place where at the end, and we make our recommendation, that we say, you should have a resolution that adopts that our city attorney, or charter, or our city attorney or the firm must have municipal experience. Maybe that's where it goes.
yeah, I think it goes in the bucket.
I talked to Kaylee, and she told me that there really isn't, the city council doesn't really have a policy manual. So maybe what we should do is recommend that the city council create a policy manual, and these kind of things can be in the policy manual.
We're telling you, Dr. Dumont, put it in the bucket.
I'm ready.
Yeah, and exactly what you've heard us all say, but yes. Probably doesn't belong in the charter, but it belongs there. Yes, we're trying to keep it down. We're trying.
Residency.
In-house has gotta be here in 6 months.
Huh?
In-house, the attorney has to live here in 6 months.
And do you want the city attorney to have to live here, or do you want the same parameters as the city manager within 50 miles of town borders?
If it's not in there now, I wouldn't put it in.
There's more lawyers than there are city managers.
Thank you.
But are there more municipal lawyers than there are city managers?
Doesn't seem like
But that's what the notice is for. I mean, they put the requirements out there, and the lawyer that wants to, you know, solicit it, he knows if he's good for it or not.
They do travel quite a bit, and you know, I'm sure that you've seen lawyers come from as far as, if you're in Jacksonville, you've seen them come as far as Tallahassee to work for the municipality. So it's not like, apparently it's a norm. I don't know if it really is.
Specialization in municipal law is not the norm. So it can be difficult to find those who pass this. It's actually a certification for the Florida Bar that does that. You have big law firms that they're able to negotiate better rates for especially smaller cities, because it's expensive to hire your own lawyer, and so they provide the legal services for a lot of municipalities. So I guess my question would be, do you want to have different standards for your city attorney than you do your city manager? Because here you're saying that the city manager doesn't have to live in the city, but your city attorney does, if done in-house.
Oh, if you live here, yeah, if you work here, live here, yeah, you should live here. Yeah, if you work here, absolutely.
But not if you're the city manager.
City
Well,
manager too.
You know, the city man, well,
Because that goes back to where we were within the 50 miles.
they changed lawyers just as fast as they changed city managers, I don't know. I don't have an answer, so I think it goes in the bucket.
Okay.
When do you wanna go back to, public comment, just in case, so we don't miss anybody? Just cover
Yeah,
them.
there's one more to, the city attorney one is quick.
Because we have such a big crowd, we wanna make sure we get everybody in here. I wish people would come. We implore people, we beg people, we want them to come. Please come, please be heard.
Even the chamber, announced these meetings today in their.
Well, it's on the radio,
weekly
it's on
newsletter.
Wagoneer tonight.
The chamber, in their weekly letter announced all our meetings for November and December.
Yes, that's true. We got a little notoriety. Yes.
I know, several times this week I listened to, Flag Radio, but, I mean, they announce it over and over again and ad nauseum.
Well, we'll work on this. All right, so, okay, list. All right, so then C, powers and duties of the city attorney shall serve as chief legal officer to the city council, the city manager, and all city departments, offices, city advisory boards and agencies. If in-house appointment, suspend or remove such assistants, if in-house, appoint, suspend, or remove such assistant attorneys as may be required. This is saying that the city attorney, if in-house, can run his or her
Own department.
department. The remainder of the staff, okay. City attorney or designee shall attend all city council meetings unless excused by the city council, and shall perform such duties, professional duties as may be required by law or by the council in furtherance of the law. The city attorney shall prepare an annual budget for the operation of the office of the city attorney and shall submit this budget to the city manager for inclusion in the annual city budget in accordance with uniform city procedures.
I'm looking at C2, and it says, if the city's services are contracted, the city manager shall appoint and suspend or remove the assistant attorneys. Did they mean city attorney? What?
If in-house, that's in-house.
I'm a little confused by that.
Because in the rest of the line, if the city attorney services are contracted out, such as they currently are, the city manager shall appoint, suspend, or remove any in-house assistant attorneys as may be required. The remainder of the staff of the office of city attorney shall be employees of the city, appointed, suspended, removed under the regular personnel policies of the city.
Do we actually have an office of the city attorney?
I was just looking, maybe that's one of these ones where, that's almost saying like, you've hired an outside attorney. If the attorney, they're contracted, and they're gonna have an in-house assistant?
Yeah, like, to make sure the paperwork gets done, signatures if they need them, like a touch point within the city.
So the in-house attorney is going to be appointed by the city manager?
That would be the in-house attorney, so that would be, if the attorney is contracted out, but that attorney's assistant doesn't necessarily mean that the assistant is a lawyer or an attorney, would be a city employee who would fall under the purview of the city manager.
Okay.
But it does say assistant attorneys.
Yeah, it's
Right, it's the assistant to the attorney, but it could be a lawyer, or it could just be whomever is assisting the attorney.
So
I don't read it that way. It says appoint, suspend, or remove such assistant attorneys. It doesn't say assistant.
Yeah.
Assistant attorneys, the way I read it, means that the city manager can hire or fire actual attorneys that work for the city.
Well, if they work for the city, then yes.
That's what I see that.
Because then if the city attorney is contracted, that contractor is not hiring people for the city to work as a lawyer.
I see.
The city manager may hire a lawyer who's not the city attorney, it could be an assistant attorney to the contracted out city attorney. But that assistant attorney would fall under the purview of the city manager, not the contracted out city attorney.
But if we never do that, why would this be in here?
Just in case you have to.
And it's an amazing point, because who spent the brain power to write that, actually? Because, you know, when you
An
think,
attorney
I know,
or an assistant attorney,
The attorney,
or an assistant to the attorney.
right?
yeah.
I hate it, but I like it, but I hate it. All right, thank you. Any changes to this, guys? We'll stay on that. Move on, not too good. Are we doing public comment?
Yeah, you have to be public
Okay.
comment.
Yeah, we finished.
Yeah, we're going into a different,
Yes, we'll stay on these are all the ones that we just covered.
Yeah, this is all under, the city attorney, yeah, this is all the city attorney too, I thought.
Traffic, yeah, city attorney.
Go ahead, Sharon.
All right, on the funny side, and gladly remind you my name if you forgot.
I don't think we can forget you, Sean.
No, Sharon.
Yeah, Chantal, that works, okay.
Like the share, Chantel.
All right, so, about the budget, I didn't attend the meetings about the budget, but I know that the city has borrowed money, here and there, and I would like to see when they present the budget, and I don't know if they do it or not, but, if we could have it, I don't know if that's even a good idea, in the document, when they present it, to talk about the debt and where we are in the repayment. And so, because when we have that in mind, it's more difficult to present all the new money to borrow. And as far as residency for the city attorney, I agree with you that if you make rules for the city manager, the same should apply to the city attorney. But I'm surprised that the qualifications for the city attorney are not that precise, and there's much more that you want for the city manager. I'd like to have something more precise for the attorney. And I was wondering, if you come up with some regulation for the city attorney, and the one we have does not have those, what happens to him? That would mean he would not be the person that people would want him to be, or, I mean, it's just a question. Also, power and duty of the city attorney. The paragraph 2, I find really not clear, and I saw you were asking questions about that too. So I'd like to see if we keep it this way to be more precise and easier to understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeannie Torte. As far as the city attorney and city manager, the 50-mile out of the limits of the city, I think that should be absolutely no. They should live within the city. Volusia County has banned reclaimed water, and we are moving forward with reclaimed water. That's toilet to tap. So if we're affected, they need to be affected too. They need to live and fight for the same things within our city. They need to care about our city. So I don't agree with hiring people that are 50 miles away from Palm Coast. If we're affected, they need to be affected too. They need to fight and be part of our community. As with everybody, they should be within the districts. They shouldn't be able to move here for a purpose of running for a position and then, okay, we got you all set up for something that we don't approve of. See ya, we won't be ya. So definitely, I don't believe our city manager or our attorney should be outside of our city limits. Thank you.
Anyone else? I don't see anyone else approaching.
Harry, can I respond?
Yes.
Eugenie. Dr. Dumont has informed us that there aren't not that many attorneys who practice municipal law. And if we try to hire either a firm or hire the actual city attorney to work for us, it'd probably be really difficult to get one who'd want to move here. I don't know where the firm that we contract with now, whether they're in
Jacksonville.
I was gonna say, I'm not sure they're in Palm Coast. So I'm not sure that we could do that, because if the law firm's in Jacksonville, they're not gonna send an attorney to move here to Palm Coast. So the city manager, we could, the city attorney, I'm not sure that we could actually have the power to do that, to find somebody who would wanna move here. As good an idea as it sounds like, I'm just not sure we'd find anybody that would wanna do that.
That's not the reality
no.
with the city manager. The reality we have right now is we can't find one that lives here. So that's why we have to open the horizons.
Just to remind you, the whole residency thing for the city attorney is if it is taken in-house only. So as long as it remains contracted, they live wherever they live. Because the attorney's firm is under the contract. The residency requirement is if the city chooses to hire its own city attorney full-time, they're here, they're gonna have to set up the city attorney's office, they'll need to get a legal aid and the desk, find places and all that stuff. At that point, according to this, they would have to live in the city. But this is all in the bucket. The CM and CA residency, and for that, I will look at what the numbers are, and I'll call around finding out the last hires over the last couple of years for city managers or city attorneys, how were the numbers on qualified candidates? And whether they had a requirement or no requirement, because if there's a requirement and somebody doesn't want to move, they're not even gonna apply. Especially if it's in the charter, because there's no requirement.
Are there management firms too?
In-house would be, just like the city manager, the city council could hire a search firm, they could have HR do it, but they look for people who they'd hire to be a lawyer. And that lawyer is a contracted employee for the city, and they'd get the Palm Coast paycheck, they would be there for, they would have the same dental, medical, retirement benefits that an employee of the city has. That would be the in-house, so they would be starting a new department. That's the difference between in-house, where if it's a contracted attorney, the city contracts with a law firm, and that law firm's attorney or attorneys, because you also have to remember, you're going to do an in-house attorney, that attorney is not going to be able to specialize in all the things that you would hope that one would know or need to know that relate to the city. So you could have an in-house city attorney who is really good at contracts, but then if there's a labor law issue, then you'd want to seek out a labor law attorney. If there is litigation facing the city, and that's not in your in-house attorney's wheelhouse, then you contract out that piece with an outside attorney again. And that's one of the harder things. If you are going to have an in-house city attorney, and you're only going to have one, and that attorney can have an assistant, maybe a legal assistant or a paralegal, you still end up having to contract out for different specialty services, where if you just contract out the legal services of the city, it is up to that law firm usually to have those different specialties on staff. Still, there are times it has to be contracted out because it can be very, very specialized.
So maybe we need a lawyer who is more knowledgeable himself and have more.
You will not find a lawyer who can do everything. It's just too complicated.
Then why are we looking for a manager that does everything?
You're not asking the manager to do everything, you're asking a manager who can manage and oversee other people who can do everything. The city manager's job is not to know how to fix things at the water plant and the sewage plant, and how to do a SWAT raid on a drug house. You know, we're not asking the city manager to do any of those things. You're asking the city manager to oversee the operation of the city. Where your city attorney, you are asking, and this gets to why isn't there more specifics, with your city attorney, you are really asking them, your regular go-to city attorney is to be the one who's answering all the questions of your department heads, of your city manager, of your city council members, and these tend to be general municipal questions. But then when you start getting into litigation, contract litigations, more meaty stuff, you have a separate city attorney for those specific things. So the city attorney is not overseeing all of those functions that your city manager is. Now, larger cities like Jacksonville has umpteen lawyers because they have lawyers who specialize in a whole bunch of different things. Your county, the county attorneys have multiple lawyers who specialize in education law and law enforcement law, and you know, so unless you're going to, if a city brings in one city attorney in-house, there will still be a requirement to contract out depending on what the specialty is. So that's what I just got with that one.
Right,
That was rather long-winded. I apologize.
That's okay, you did good, I think you covered a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we could move on now.
You need a fan?
You're good.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you know, we're just up to the budget. Budget and appropriations. Let me take a sip.
You did good.
Do we need a break, does anyone need a break? You good? The clock says 8:40, which is really 7:40, so you still have time.
7:41 and 5 seconds.
Right.
All right, budget and appropriations. Fiscal year. The city fiscal year shall begin on October 1st and will end on September 30th of the succeeding year. Even if you wanted to change that, you can't, this is a Florida statute.
Unfortunately.
It's how Florida does things. Actually,